Hi, Enders. We're back, and today we're going to talk about The Dark Tower 2, the drawing of the three. Now, the drawing of the three picks up hours after Roland and Walter had their tarot card meeting, and Roland has fallen asleep at the Western Sea. I know I called it the gray sea in the last video, but that's because I was thinking about the color of the sand as it's described as gray, and that's all I could really remember at the time. But I digress. Moving on. So, Roland is dreaming that he is Jake. Jake fell to his death, drowned in the river underneath the mountain. He's dreaming about drowning, but also at the same time, the high tide line comes in and begins to soak his bullets. Roland wakes up in panic because wet shells won't fire, and it's not like he has an infinite number of shells. He begins to trudge away back up the beach, but the nighttime and the tide have brought a creature known as the Lobstrosity. It's a giant mutated lobster that speaks, and it asks you questions like, did a chick and dumb a chum and dumb a shun? Did a choke? So as Roland's backing away, this thing is a predator, and it bites off the first two finger, the index finger and middle finger of Roland's right hand, and the tip of his left toe, big toe. Roland eventually kills the thing with a giant rock, and now Roland is injured, but his injuries, the injuries from the Lobstrosities, also lead to an infection. So now Roland is running sick with fever when he finally comes across the first freestanding door on the beach, the prisoner, Eddie Dean of New York. He opens the door. To his amazement, Eddie is in what he thinks is a sky carriage. It's an airplane. So he steps through the door and steps into the mind of Eddie Dean. He finds out Eddie Dean is on a flight from Nassau back into JFK with cocaine underneath his armpits for a criminal known as Enrico Balazar. He is giving Enrico Balazar the cocaine so they could get heroin, so him and his brother Henry Dean, the eminent sage and eminent junkie, can score, because his older brother Henry, turned him on to the stuff. Great brother. We'll get into him a little later. Now, Roland comes forward, and he realizes that he can control Eddie while Eddie's asleep. He can rummage through Eddie's mind. He asks the stewards for some sandwiches, and he brings them back into his world, and he eats them. Tuna fish. He's never heard of it before. He calls it tuna fish. It's kind of funny. Fish out water type thing. But Eddie has hazel eyes and Roland has blue eyes, so when Roland's in control, Eddie's eyes change to Roland's blue bombardier eyes, and this alerts the stewardess. She tries to convince herself it's contacts at first, but then all the stories about hijacking and everything, she gets really paranoid, alerts another stewardess, they alert the captain. Roland realizes that they're onto him, and he begins initial contact with Eddie. Roland tells Eddie to go in the bathroom. Roland manages to bring Eddie through the door, and Roland removes the cocaine, and Eddie gets arrested by customs. Well, he stays 2 hours for customs, but that's enough time for the criminal Enrico Balazar to panic. They go and they pick up his brother Henry, who can barely function. He's such an addict. And so when Eddie gets out, Roland's talking to him. Eddie grabs some aniston as Roland calls it, a couple hot dogs and a Coke, and sends it back to Roland and tells him to take the aspirin to help bring down the fever. Now, Eddie is picked up by Jack Andolini, that's Balazar's brother-in-law and chief lieutenant. So they go to Balazar's club, the Leaning Tower. Yes, tower. Ha 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 ha. And during these events, Henry gets a hot shot. He dies from too much heroin in his system. That comes into play a little later. Eddie goes in to see Balazar. He says he has Balazar's goods. He wants Henry, and he'll make them appear. So they strip Eddie down naked to make sure he's not wearing a wire, not carrying anything on him. And they go into the bathroom after Andolini searched it first. He just to make sure Henry didn't, I'm sorry, Eddie didn't pull a fast one on anybody. So when they go in, Roland steps up. They get Andolini into the door, through the door at the beach. And Andolini's terrified of Roland. He thinks Roland is some sort of something a dark god carved out of wood and stone. Roland ends up shooting Andolini's gun out of his hand at the same time Andolini was shooting. It takes off parts of Andolini's hands and face. Andolini runs down to the beach screaming and gets eaten by the lobsters. While this is happening, Eddie hears that Henry is dead and wants to go to war. So Roland and Eddie come through the door, Roland with his gun, Eddie with the other one, and they have a shootout with Enrico Balazar, killing Enrico Balazar and all his men in the process. Eddie sees in the sink there's Keflex, which is a form of penicillin. He grabs it for Roland, he grabs his clothes, and Roland and him, since there's nothing left for Eddie in this world, go through the door shuts, falls in the sand, it's dead. So now Eddie is going through the hell of withdrawal, and Roland is going through the hell of the fever from the lobstrosity bite. So Eddie is shooting and killing the lobsters. You can cook them, you can eat them. They actually taste like lobster, even though their bite's poisonous. So that's what they're surviving on. And then they come across the second door, the Lady of Shadows. Eddie wants to go through to score and get some chicken. Roland refuses, and Eddie threatens to cut Roland's throat if he goes through the door alone. Roland goes through. Now we meet the second one of his drawing, Odetta Holmes, who's a wealthy black civil rights activist, just returned from Oxford, Mississippi, after the Freedom Riders who were down there went missing and ended up murdered, the three of them. After being tortured in a jail cell, psychologically tortured because nobody wanted to hurt her because she has 12 plants that her father left her, Holmes Dental, in the South. So nobody wants to really hurt Miss Holmes because then she'll close the plants. They'll be out of jobs. They're terrified. Now Odetta is in a wheelchair. She's missing her legs from the bottom, from her knees down, because she was pushed in front of the A train some years ago. And Odetta, you'll meet Detta in a minute. She has a split personality, a psychopath by the name of Detta Walker. She's described as Butterfly McQueen meets a Looney Tunes because she had a brick dropped on her head as a child, and it caused this split personality. But when she lost her legs, the personality became more prevalent. Now, as Roland entered her mind, he enters the mind of Detta Walker, who's busy shoplifting. Detta feels Roland's alienness and feels that he's white and begins to scream as Roland takes over and wheels her unwillingly through the door. And when they come through, Eddie has Roland's knife to his throat, but when they come through, it switches. Detta becomes Odetta. So they meet Odetta, who refuses to believe any of this is real. She thinks she got bopped in the head with a billy club and is having another one of her dreams like she did as a child when she got dropped in the brick that created Detta Walker. Eddie begins to fall in love with Odetta, and she eventually reciprocates, but that comes later. So now Roland has drawn the 2 out of his 3. So they start going down the beach, and eventually Odetta changes, and Roland and Eddie have a conversation about schizophrenia, split personalities, and Odetta tries to kill Eddie with the butt of Roland's gun, because Roland filled it with empty shells. While they slipped, she woke up, took Roland's gun, tried to shoot Eddie. When she realized it wasn't going to fire, she clubbed Eddie. Eddie moves out of the way and gets it nasty in the jaw. It's a teaching lesson for Roland because he wasn't on the guard like Roland taught him. So they end up restraining Detta to the wheelchair, and she calls them honky motherfuckers, and the real bad man is Roland, and she's gonna fucking kill them and everything. Just nasty, vile creature that she is, and she tries to upset the wheelchair and make Eddie work harder while Roland is like dead on his feet. So as it goes on, eventually Odetta does come back because they split and they shift through personalities. And Odetta and Eddie go off and find the third and final door, leaving Roland behind because they can travel faster together. And Odetta and Eddie make love for the first time. They're in love. Like I said, they fall in love. It's happy. And Roland likes it too, because Roland is a secret romantic at heart, and he keeps that guarded. Now, they get to the third door. Eddie goes back for Roland, but when he leaves Odetta there, and Odetta becomes Detta again, so they have that problem. They go. The third door is for Roland is about to go through, tells Eddie to be on his guard. The third door is for the pusher. Now, the pusher is an accountant by the name Jack Mort, who is also a calculating psychopath whose modus operandi is to push people in front of things, or to drop things on people from high up places. You'll see how this will all tie together. When he enters the mind of Jack Mort, he is about to push Jake Chambers, the boy he sacrificed, into the street, and Roland steps forward and stops him from doing it. That will come into play in the next book as a problem. So, as he researches through Jack's mind, he finds that Jack is the one who dropped the brick on Odetta's head and calls Odetta Walker. Many years later, he finds Odetta at the subway station waiting, and pushes her in front of that fabled A train. Again, taking her legs. Three major events caused by this man. Roland decides he doesn't need him. When Jack realizes somebody's in his head, Jack kind of passes out. So he kind of drives Jack Mort's body around New York, getting bullets and getting medicine and guns. Well, he wants to bring the guns. He eventually doesn't bring them. But the main point is he basically just uses Jack Mort as a vessel. There's a shootout with some cops. He injures a couple cops. He gets the Catholics. He gets the bullets. And as he has Mort take him to the A train station in the end, and he jumps on the tracks and he calls out with his mind for Odetta/Detta to look at him. Now, while all this is going on the beach in Roland's world, Odetta has injured Eddie with rock. And has trussed him up along the high tide line, and is waiting for the Lobstrosities to come out to eat Eddie. And when Roland wakes up, she's planning to try to shoot him with whatever bullets are in Roland's guns. So, as Roland's running down the tracks, Jack Mort's screaming inside his head body, he forces Odetta to look, and they see each other for the first time. And as Roland leaps through the door, Jack Mort is killed, severed by the A train from the waist down. He dies alone. Now, Roland runs down to try to save Eddie because the Lobstrosities are coming out of the water by this point. Odetta and Detta fight with each other. Odetta tries to kill her. Not yet. Detta embraces her, and they become a third woman, Susanna Dean. Susanna saves Roland, saves Eddie from the Lobstrosities with the gun. She unties Eddie, and they finally make it off the Western Sea into the forest. And that's where we leave the three of them for a couple months before we get into the third book, The Wasteland. Now, here's my question for you, Enders. Knowing all this, you're, again, the gunslinger. You've gotten injured. You can't escape being injured. What do you do? Do you end up drawing the three, or do you just use the three to meet your own purposes and carry on the quest alone? If you drew the three, do you decide to take Jack Mort the psychopath with you and play him out like a wild card? But if you don't, do you get Odetta and Detta to merge into one woman and become Susanna? I mean, what happens? What do you do with these doors, with these choices, with the way you affect these people's lives? Please tell me. And next week, we will get into Dark Tower 3, The Wasteland. So, until then, Enders, thank you for watching. Please like, share, subscribe if you haven't. After the Dark Tower series, there's some big changes coming to the channel, and we hope you guys will. It's still participation, it'll still be a hashtag, but it's going to be a new level, and we hope you guys will join us. I'm the host. As always, till next week.